If you are in therapy, you're probably wasting your time. Worse, you're probably doing yourself more harm than good. That's the case that I want to make today in this segment. But first, let's establish some necessary background to begin with. That starts with this. Recently, The Hill published a report telling us what we already know, which is that Americans love going to therapy. According to the outlet, quote, the number of Americans seeking mental health treatment is almost twice as high as it was 2 decades ago, reflecting a historic recent decline in mental health, but also an increase in virtual care and positive trends of destigmatization. In 2004, just 13% of adults said that they had visited a therapist, psychiatrist, or other mental health professional within the past year, according to Gallup polling. In 2022, that number was up to 23%. Now, to put this in perspective in terms of raw numbers, if these percentages are accurate, then somewhere around 60 million adults in this country are in therapy. Reading on, quote, a majority of psychologists reported seeing more patients seek help for disorders related to anxiety, depression, or stress in 2020, and again in 2021 and 2022, according to an annual survey from the American Psychological Association. Many health experts link to increased demand to plummeting mental health during the pandemic, which led to spikes in the numbers of Americans reporting depression and anxiety. Some health experts think the numbers tell another story, however, one about the success of teletherapy. Now, it's important to note that success in this sentence doesn't mean that this type of therapy has proven effective at helping people solve their problems. It just means that teletherapy has become more and more common as therapy customers find it easy and convenient to sit in the comfort of their own homes and attend therapy over FaceTime. This is part of what has increased the demand. It's what is driving the increased demand. The article also puts a lot of the blame on COVID. But these are all trends that far predate COVID and FaceTime. In fact, I found an article from the American Psychological Association noting the significant increase in Americans seeking mental health services, and that article was published in 2004. So in 2004, they were already noticing this big increase in people going to therapy, and now we know, compared to 2004, it's doubled since then. The trends become even more evident when you break it down generationally. The Hill notes that as of 2019, which means that all these numbers are higher now, 37% of Gen Z had received therapy, 35% of millennials, and 26% of Gen Xers. So it's clear that something like COVID is a relatively minor factor here. Therapy is becoming more and more popular generation after generation, and these trends have been observable for decades. Which is interesting when you consider, again, the very first sentence of this article, which says, the number of Americans seeking mental health treatment is almost twice as high as it was 2 decades ago, reflecting a historic recent decline in mental health. So it's not just the Hill noticing this either. I mean, the rest of the media, along with our public health authorities, also insist that mental health is declining at a historic rate. Well, that's a funny thing, isn't it? Correlation doesn't always mean causation, but still, the correlation here is hard to ignore. Over the decades, we're told mental health is getting worse and worse, even though more and more people are going to therapy. Each year, more people go to therapy, and yet the problem only gets worse. There's a bit of a chicken and egg conundrum here, of course. Maybe more people are going to therapy because mental health is allegedly so bad, you could always argue. But even then, if therapy works, if all of the collective billions that Americans have spent on therapy was actually money well spent, then shouldn't we see those benefits manifest themselves in the culture at some point? Instead, we just see more and more people going to therapy while all the problems therapy is supposed to fix only continue to get worse and worse, year after year after year after year. Just to use a quick football analogy, shortly after the end of the 2022 season, the Baltimore Ravens fired their strength and conditioning coach by the name of Steve Saunders. He had been in that job for several years, and each year under his tenure, it seemed as though players were getting injured at an unusually high rate, and the problem only got worse over time. A rash of injuries plagued the Ravens every year. Now, you might argue that if players are getting injured a lot, that's all the more reason to not fire your strength and conditioning coach. He's got a lot of work to do. There's all the more reason why we need him. Just let him do his work. But of course, the trend indicates that whatever Steve Saunders was doing to help prevent injuries wasn't working. If you have a good strength and conditioning coach, you should find that player health and fitness is trending up. If it trends down year after year, it probably means that you need to seriously revamp your strength and conditioning department and fire the people in charge of it. So a similar point can be made about the people tasked with ensuring that mental the mental strength and conditioning of Americans. We have seen nothing but decline in that area, decade upon decade, which probably means that a whole lot of people in the mental health industry should be fired. On a macro societal level, there simply is no reason to believe that most of these people are doing us any good at all. On the micro level, you can see this as well. It's not a coincidence that many of the worst and most dysfunctional people you'll ever meet have been in therapy for years. Now, there's no sign that it's doing them any good, that it's prompting any improvements, but they keep at it. It reminds you of a morbidly obese person who's been seeing a dietitian for 15 years. Something just isn't working here. Now, you see the morbidly obese person and you find out they're seeing a dietitian. You say, well, that's good. That's the kind of person who needs a dietitian. But then you hear, oh, I've been going to this guy for 15 years. Okay, unless you started at 7,000 pounds and now you're down to 300, unless that's the case, then clearly there's a problem with the dietitian. Something's not working here. With everything going on in the world right now, you could really use a good night's sleep. I know that I could. Well, that's why you need to check out Helix Mattress. Helix has harnessed years of extensive mattress expertise to bring their customers to a truly elevated sleep experience. They just launched their new Helix Elite. The Helix Elite collection includes 6 different mattress models, each tailored for specific sleep positions and firmness preferences. I've had my Helix for years now. I absolutely love it. Night after night, I sleep like a sweet, sweet baby, and I want the same for you. Helix has a sleep quiz that matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you, because why would you want to sleep on a mattress that was made for somebody else? Go to helixsleep.com/Walsh and take their 2-minute sleep quiz to find the perfect mattress for your body and sleep type. Their flexible payment plans make it so that a great night's sleep is never far away. For a limited time, Helix is giving you 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Take advantage of this amazing offer at helixsleep.com/Walsh. With Helix, better sleep starts now. As many of you know, I wasn't super thrilled when my family got a dog, but they are obsessed with it, which is why, despite my own distaste for the mangy beast, I love making my family happy. And part of doing that is keeping this freeloader as healthy as possible, which is why I give my dog Rough Greens. Dr. Dennis Black, the founder of Rough Greens, is focused on improving the health of every dog in America. Little did I know, before I got Rough Greens, dog food is dead food. Everybody knows that nutrition isn't brown, it's green. Well, let Rough Greens boost your dog's food back to life. Rough Greens is a supplement that contains all the necessary vitamins, minerals, probiotics, omega oils, digestive enzymes, and antioxidants that your dog needs. You don't have to go out and buy new dog food. You just sprinkle Rough Greens on their food every day. Dog owners everywhere are raving about Rough Greens. It supports healthy joints, improves bad breath, boosts energy levels, and so much more. We are what we eat, and that goes for dogs too. Dr. Dennis Black is so confident Rough Greens will improve your dog's health. He's offering my listeners a free Jumpstart trial bag so your dog can try it. A free Jumpstart trial bag can be at your door in just a few business days. Go to freeroughgreens.com/Walsh or call 844-ROUGH-700. That's free, RUFF, greens.com/Walsh or call 844-ROUGH-700 today. Yesterday on the members block, we watched this video of a twice divorced woman explaining why none of the bad things in her life are her fault. Let's watch that again.
Things I stopped with after my divorce. People who judge me based off of my choices. Oh, you would never get a divorce no matter what? Cool. Well, I've had 2. Be well. Also stopped with the narrative that something was wrong with me. Nothing is wrong with me. Things happened to me that made me the person that I was and have the struggles that I had. You can fix that. Anything that you don't like, anything that is no longer serving you, change it. Change it. Go to therapy. Do the journaling. Practice meditation. Do the things that you need to do to be the person you want to be.
Go to therapy, she says. If we can assume that she's taken her own advice, we see again how therapy has not helped this truly awful person be any less awful. If anything, it seems to have reinforced all of her worst attitudes and beliefs. By the way, this woman, Leah Marie is her name, she is a life coach who specializes in helping coach women through their own divorces. The About Me on her website says this: "My second divorce was the ugliest wake-up call ever. That's when I knew I needed to do things differently if I was going to find the happiness I really wanted. So I did all the things: therapy, journaling, meditation, reading books, listening to podcasts. I wanted to learn as much as I could about rebuilding my self-esteem, loving myself, taking better care of myself, and knowing my worth." She went to therapy apparently and discovered that nothing is her fault, that everything is everyone else's fault, that she's been divorced twice, and yet it was something that happened to her each time, not something that she did or is at fault for. And now she's on a journey of trying to live the most selfish life she possibly can, while helping other women do the same. By its fruits shall we know it, and the fruits, as we have seen with therapy, are very rotten indeed. Now, there's a lot that goes into this, many culprits that could be named, a lot driving the problem, but I would like to suggest that part of the issue is that in many cases, not all but many, therapy turns out to be not only a waste of time, but something that will ultimately do more harm than good. Now, why might that be the case? Well, for one thing, as is the case with whoever has been counseling Leah Marie, the divorce coach, that we just watched, a great many therapists and psychologists and counselors and others in the psych industry have a deeply and fundamentally disordered view of humanity and what constitutes healthy behavior and good habits of thought and action. If therapy has any chance of helping you at all, it depends largely on the assumption that the therapist will have correct and useful insights into life and the human condition. But there is no license, there's no degree, there's no resume, there's no credential that ensures that someone is wise and insightful, much less that they have a correct understanding of the human condition. And what we find in many cases is that the people in this industry not only have no special insight into any of this, but in fact are more confused than half of the people who come to see them seeking guidance. Consider the fact that many people who declare themselves trans have this idea first suggested to them by a therapist or a counselor. This issue alone absolutely proves that the therapy industry is a disaster. Most therapists will not only affirm the notion that a woman can be trapped in a man's body, but will even suggest it. Now, if your problems have nothing to do with gender and you have your head screwed on straight enough anyway that you aren't worried about being coaxed and developing your own case of dysphoria, maybe you wonder, well, do I have to worry about this? Even if the therapist endorses gender theory, is that a problem for me? But you still have to worry about it because you have to ask yourself, is the therapist that you're paying an exorbitant hourly rate to the kind of person who thinks women can be trapped in men's bodies? And if so, this is a person so delusional, so confused, so captured by far-left ideology that their insights cannot possibly be trusted on any subject at all. And yet the majority of therapists fall into this category. But the pitfalls with therapy don't just lie with the fact that so many therapists are bad and stupid. Before we can even get to the point of analyzing the quality of the therapist, we have to deal with the problems inherent to the very practice of therapy itself. And the biggest one is this, that many people go to therapy simply because they want to talk about themselves. It feeds their narcissistic impulse to talk incessantly and think incessantly about themselves. This is the real reason why therapy is so popular in our culture and why it becomes more popular with each generation. It's not that mental health is declining, it's that narcissism is increasing. And narcissism is not so much a mental health problem as a character flaw. And this is primarily what drives the mad rush to therapy. Lots of narcissists who are willing to pay by the hour just to have the privilege of having a 60-minute block reserved exclusively to conversation focused on themselves. But this is exactly the opposite of what many of these people need. What they need instead is to stop talking about themselves, stop thinking about themselves, stop dwelling on their own petty problems, stop trying to make every obstacle they face into some great saga of trial and triumph, and instead just go live their lives with some humility and sense of perspective. The best advice anyone can give you for 90% of the problems that you bring to a therapist is this: get over yourself and quit whining. Go for a jog, get a hobby, do something more, just don't buy goats. Do something more interesting with your life than constantly analyzing your own feelings. Your feelings aren't that interesting or important. Are you sad? Are you stressed out? Well, welcome to human existence. Okay, that's part of the bargain. Not every difficult emotion or personal experience needs to be hashed out and analyzed and focused on. You shouldn't even need to talk about most of it. Life is hard. Yours probably isn't as hard as you think. If you have enough money to spend $150 an hour to talk about yourself, that automatically means you have an easier life than like 3 billion other people on the planet. I mean, there is a whole family starving to death in a hut made out of plywood somewhere in the world while you cry to a therapist that your dad missed your dance recital when you were 7 years old. This doesn't mean that none of your problems are serious, but it does mean that most of them probably aren't. Most of your complaints you should keep to yourself and tell no one and move on with your life. You should have a whole host of worries and concerns that you have never told anyone, that nobody knows about, because you carry them yourself with quiet dignity. If you are the sort of person who has never had a problem you didn't tell someone about or a complaint you didn't complain about, then therapy is the last thing you need. Except for the therapy I'm giving you right now, the therapy that says, grow up, you whiny child. This is what a huge number of therapy customers need to hear, but they won't hear it because most therapists won't say it or anything like it. That's because, and here's the really big ingrained problem. The therapist's income depends on your not getting over yourself. There is a conflict of interest here. It's the same conflict of interest every time Apple releases a new phone. We know that if the phone is too good, if it's too durable, if it works too well, if it's too reliable, then you're not going to need to buy another one for a long time. And that's why they always make sure that the products will not be durable or reliable. Last month, the company behind the Instant Pot filed for bankruptcy. Instant Pot was a phenomenon just a few years ago. Everyone in the country went out and bought one. Now the company's going under. Why? Well, the product was too good. Everybody bought one. And nobody needed to buy another one because Instant Pots work and they stay working for several years at least. The company made the mistake of creating a well-made, durable product, a mistake that not many companies in America make these days, and even fewer will now. This is also the issue for therapists. If they give you the Instant Pot version of therapy, if their therapy is useful and efficient and effective and offers durable, practical, long-lasting solutions, then you're not going to need to come back every week and pay $150 an hour to rehash the same issues over and over again. The therapist will have helped you become a better, more stable, more well-adjusted person, but he'll have lost a revenue stream at the same time. Some therapists, a small minority, are willing to make that trade, but most are not. So this is where we're left. If therapy will have any chance of helping you at all, the therapist would need to be a very wise person with a keen understanding of the human condition, great moral insight, enough life experience to serve as a competent guide, whose objective is to stop earning money from you. Okay? The good therapist is one who doesn't want your money anymore, who wants you to get over it and move on, and actually possesses the wisdom, skill, intelligence, character, and insight to guide you in that direction. Now, this sort of therapist certainly does exist. They exist out there in the wild world, but they are very, very rare. Most come from a more common stock, the sort of therapist who counsels the lost and confused and narcissistic, but is just as lost, confused, and narcissistic as they are. And those are the therapists that are today canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.